How's it going, New World? Sethphir here, and today we are going to take a look at the Tempest Heart. This is going to be a sort of a little guide, a little walkthrough to just tell you everything that you need to know within the instance. And there are a few secrets inside of it, as well as a couple of challenging and complicated bosses. In my opinion, this is probably one of the hardest expeditions within the game. And I think that it will be very challenging on the mutated dungeon levels, and yes, there is a mutated levels for it. It's within the game. You can see it when you touch the portal, when you go to the entrance of the expedition, and it definitely could be very fun. That's for sure something that I'm looking forward to, is beating mutation level 10 on the Tempest Heart. So first we'll go ahead and dive in, and this is going to be your basic corrupted instance. So you're going to take all the consumables that you would normally take for like Dynasty Shipyard. So you're going to want corruption damage pots, you're going to want, you know, your weapon sharpening stones, as well as all of your consumables for constitution food or whatever stat food that may be, and make sure that you have your corrupted trophies on as well. This dungeon has a couple of particularly nasty bosses, actually. There are some real bosses with mechanics in here, probably on par to Scylla, maybe a little bit harder. So if you know anything about the other place where Scylla is, then it'll probably be a good run for your money. For most groups, it's going to be quite adventurous, let's say. So when you go inside the instance, there is a lot of things to do, and the first thing to keep in mind is that there are hidden treasure chests within this instance. They are going to look like ordinary boxes, so sometimes there are boxes with loot, but there are also boxes that contain these sort of gray swords. The gray swords are used at the end of the dungeon to unlock what I've been told is a second box or second reward box, so that's something pretty cool to do, so make sure your group keeps an eye out for these. They are very, very easy to miss because everything in this dungeon is like dark and glowing red and all kinds of craziness, so it's hard to spot actually for the most part. So we'll go ahead and skip through the important parts here. There are a few dungeon nodes within the dungeon, like Orichalcum and fire motes and things like that, so you can go ahead and pick those up along your way, but we'll get to the bread and butter, the important parts, which is going to be all named monsters and event encounters. So let's go ahead and move on forward to that. After killing a few monsters along the way, eventually you will go up the path to meet Isabella for the first time within the instance. She will just give a little dialogue that triggers a boss to spawn. The spawn is very similar to the model of a lot of the heavily armored sword-wielding monsters that you would see around most likely the Shattered Mountains. He is pretty straightforward. He has a stamina bar, and that's pretty much it. He is in a sort of corrupted portal style area, and this was quite dangerous even at my item level, which was somewhere near 623, 24, something like that, pretty close to maximum cap. So this is Uzret, and he was a little bit easy himself, but the monsters around the portal in which Isabella spawned made it slightly complicated, so I would just be aware of that. Make sure you have somebody channeling the triggers at the end of each of this portal so that you can close it as fast as possible, because if you don't, sometimes you can get a little bit overrun with a lot of these little monsters here. And I must say that the loot in this instance has actually been very good. This is the first time that I've seen gear that has been appropriately statted since, well, the beginning of the game. So somewhere along the way, they decided that they would now start making items that made sense other than the random lotteries from crafting. So these named items are very, very good. They have a lot of desirable perks, like they have crit damage, trenchant crits, they have plague strikes, they have critical strike, a lot of really good things that you would actually want on a weapon. So this is really nice to see. Weapons that actually matter, right? Most of the time you get some named weapons and they're really not good, right? They serve some weird specialty purpose, or they have some theme and they're like a roleplay weapon, but this time we actually have some good weapons here, so that is very nice to see, and I like to see that coming out from the developers. I think that is a step in the right directions, making weapons and armor that are actually impactful so that crafting isn't the only answer within the game. So now we'll go ahead and move forward to the next part. Right, after navigating through a few enemies, you will finally reach a graveyard-like area. I've been told there's actually a secondary boss within this instance, or this area, this graveyard-type region, but I think it's more of an optional thing. But the first one that you'll meet will be this guy, and I call him EK because I don't know what his name is. It just looks like somebody typed random letters, right, and just slapped it on there. He is a giant Spriggan, very similar to the ones you would see in the invasions. He does hit decently hard, so just be aware of all the mechanics that a Spriggan would normally have. You know, he has that giant club, and he likes to take very wide, heavy swings, which will most likely push you back and deal a decent amount of damage, but with a solid group you probably shouldn't have too much trouble. As you can see in front of me, here is one of those chests, and directly behind me there was also one of those secret chests that has that gray sword that we mentioned before, so this would be something good to look at. I would definitely keep your eye out for these, as I've been told that the spawns are dynamic, so that may be a little weird to kind of like, you know, miss one of these and be a bit awkward. You're not able to do the special thing in the end with the statues holding the sword, so make sure to keep your eyes peeled for that. But this guy is pretty straightforward. Once again, he has no stamina bar, so this is just a DPS burn race. He is gonna be very simple for pretty much all intents and purposes, so you just kind of burn him down and move on to the next section. After defeating EK, you will take a portal which will bring you to a very bizarre looking location. I really like the aesthetics of this dungeon, but this is where you will find another mini boss, Maiden Lai, and she is very simple. She is similar to the Dynasty casters. She has a lot of those same mechanics with the dragon's breath and the whirling dragon, and she also has a treasure chest located right next to her. It's going to be right on your way, so you're not going to miss anything. You should be able to just pass on through there and get that done, but I do strongly encourage you to stop and take a look at the scenery because this place is actually very wild. Alright, let's go ahead and move on to the next part. Alright, once you have obtained the cellar key from the treasure chest next to Maiden Lai, you will then go to the cellar itself and you will be met with a boss named Vroeg. He is a standard Diablo style monster, or brute, as this game would call it. He has a stamina bar, so he was pretty simple for us. He likes to throw meatballs and do a couple other of Diablo style moves like an outpost rush, so just be aware of that. In the normal mode for this dungeon, I'm sure he's going to be quite easy, but in a mutated setting, like mutation level 10, I'm sure he would be quite difficult. You also have in the back, we have this monster here named the Heretic, or maybe not monster, maybe he's a person, but I've been told that he has a lot of lore locked behind him. I won't ruin or spoil anything, but he is for sure someone of note. So we'll go ahead and move forward to the next section here. Once you progress forward on the path, you will find two wooden doors that will open for you, and you will reach your first encounter with Isabella, and she will be in her normal form as you may have seen her in the Dynasty Shipyard and other instances. It's a very straightforward fight. She has all of this same like rapier style abilities that she has had in the past, maybe some few slight mix-ups, but the goal of this fight is to get her to about 3/4 of her life bar, in which she will disappear and the encounter or instance will continue, and then you'll push forward after that. So once you have successfully brought her health down, you will be able to progress forward. Directly after encountering Isabella, you will be met with the High Priestess Ifel. He has a lot of monsters around him, so what our group did was we would just stack on top of the priest himself, or the priestess herself, and we would just burn her down along with all of her adds. This strategy may change within the mutated versions of this. She does have a lot of AoE knockbacks and pushbacks, so that could make it very difficult, especially with some of the mutated mechanics to kind of burn down. So that's going to be a little encounter that I've been looking forward to, or will be looking forward to in the future here. We also have a couple of annoying musketeers kind of placed up on the hillside, so make sure you're able to get up there and take those guys out so you can move on to the next section. Upon moving ahead, you will reach the spot where Isabella is with the same HP that you got her down before, so once again you will be able to burn her down. So the general theme of this dungeon is to follow Isabella as she sort of retreats back into her lair, and you will just continue like pursuing her over and over again, and while fighting several mini bosses along the way, she does get a lot more challenging towards the end. So I will just warn you that she will be very, very, very strong once you do finally get to encounter her. But as you go along the way, she's just going to have her general like rapier and sort of magic missile style play that she generally does within most of the dungeons. So just be a little bit cautious and able to dodge a lot of her mechanics, and you should be okay. Alright, next up we have one of my favorite sections of the dungeons. There are a few really good ones in here, but I think this one is quite awesome. You will be met with this sort of gauntlet hallway that will have turrets placed along the way, but you'll have to use these turrets to destroy the floating heads in the sky. It's very similar to the invasions. When they get into the later phase, they have these giant destruction heads with I-beam lasers, so you will have that sort of deal going on. But in addition to that, you will have some sort of a throwback to mechanics. You remember the Starstone level 35 dungeon? You would have somebody channel this rod or something and then get a barrier around them. This barrier will be used to kill the corrupted. Any corrupted inside of the barrier will be destroyed very, very quickly, so no need to worry about them. And you also use the barrier to stop the eye lasers coming out from the floating void destroyer heads. And then you would also have somebody in the repeater turret go ahead and snipe those down and defeat them. So you will just kind of progress through this gauntlet of tentacles and void destroyers and little corrupted monsters, and just move your way along the hallway until you get to the next section. As you move up the path, you will find the statue that I mentioned before. These little statues will basically have swords, or, well, what they should be holding a sword. If you've retrieved enough of these boxes, you'll be able to activate all these statues, and there is a secret behind it. I'll go ahead and leave that one for you to find out. So you will go ahead and collect these swords. There are 4 boxes within the instance, and then you will put them in the statues and something awesome happens. There's also this sort of little mini boss named Bastr here. He's just a general priest. You can mill him down rather quickly. Same issue as the other ones in the past before, although on the mutation version you might want to slow down a little bit because he has a couple of tricky magic attacks that do heavy damage, and if you're on mutated 10 or so, that could easily be a team wipe. So once you've done that, you will go ahead and move up the hall and keep killing these monsters. There are a few boxes along the way, so make sure to keep your eyes out for that. They're just supply crates. And there, as you can see, I've put one of the swords into the statue, and you can see that the statue is now holding one of the swords. So if you do all 4 of those, that will unlock the secret part of the dungeon. Alright, and as you approach up ahead, you will see a giant barrier around some sort of a structure. There are several priests on the outside of this barrier. You just simply kill these priests and you will destroy the barrier. Once you've done that, you'll be able to clean up a few of the monsters along the way and then progress your way forward to the next portal. Once you have progressed through the portal, you will probably find the easiest boss in this instance, the Headman Pang. He is just a simple dynasty-style warrior, and really he has nothing. You just kind of burn his stamina bar down, and he will die very quickly. He does drop loot, however, so hopefully you get some goodies from him, and then you will move on up the path. I've been told that he drops several best-in-slot boots, so go ahead and keep your eyes peeled for that. Finally, we will come to the first real boss of the instance, this sort of snake-looking guy. I think he's Scylla's husband, according to the lore. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Somebody correct me down below if I am. But his name is Neishatun? Okay. We'll try to pronounce that a little bit later. If anybody has correct pronunciation on that one, go ahead and drop it down below. But he is actually quite complicated. He has a lot of moves that are hard-hitting, as well as a tail whip that can push you back, so just be careful not to get knocked off the edge into oblivion. And his signature move is going to be this phase right here. He will summon sigils around the room in certain patterns and shapes that will create some safe zones within the room, and he will do this a large number of times. If you are hit by one of these fire circles, you will receive a permanent debuff on you that will do fire damage over time. Collecting too many of these will most likely result in your death, and you will probably put a lot of stress on your healer as well, so make sure to move out of the circle patterns. A lot of times it can be a little bit complicated, and he does spice up this mechanic later on in the fight by adding in extra enemies that will try to grip and pull you into the circles and into to various locations. And as you can see there was that tail whip. I almost got Sparta'd off the edge there, so make sure that that is not you. This guy is kind of no joke. For this being a base level instance, he's hitting me very, very hard, and I am a little bit terrified to see what he does on the mutated levels. As you can see, another mechanic here, we have the Corruption Core, which will summon a sort of orb, and everyone needs to DPS this orb. If you do not DPS this orb in time, it will explode, doing massive fire damage to everyone around, so you should definitely be very cautious on that. As you can see, we are entering the second phase now, finally, and you can see these corrupted monsters spawning alongside of the sigils in the room. See right here, this monster will try to pull me into the sigil itself, so that's a little sneaky. I thought that was kind of cool, so just be aware of those guys and make sure to defeat them along the way while you find yourself into a safe spot. Other than that, there's not too much to this fight. You just simply burn the guy down and repeat these phases over and over again. So we'll go ahead and skip forward to the loot for him. Alright, and here we have killed him. We received about 288 gold, and sadly I only got a green item, which is really, really sad. But it's okay. There is a box for you along your way. Some of my party members got legendary items and purple items, and he does drop some very valuable things, so it's just one of those may the odds be with you type situations. And then you will enter the portal, which will bring you down the path to the final encounter, which should be the last form of Isabella. There is a secondary portal along the way, which will sort of bring you back to the beginning, if that's something that you want to do, so you can definitely check that one out in case maybe you missed one of the swords, you want to double back for it and get some of the items like that. Alright, and here we are at the last encounter. This will be the fight between Isabella and the Tempest Heart. I will caution you that the pools of blood or little puddles on the side damage you constantly. You do not want to get caught in those, so make sure that you do not find yourself in that position. This fight is a little bit complicated. She will have a mixture of rapier style attacks as well as dashing fire moves. She also has wings and will be flying around the area, dealing massive damage to anybody caught in it. So there are definitely a few things to watch out for. So as you can see, this is the base mechanic, a couple of rapier style moves, sword moves, very flashy with her little special wing aesthetic here. And I must say that this is probably one of the cooler looking bosses within the instance. She does have a flame whirling spin, so melee you may want to watch out for that one. She has a very telegraphed tell for that, as well as a few other mechanics. She will periodically send these pillars that will seek out players. They will sometimes make sharp turns directly towards you, so make sure that you dodge away from those. Even if it looks like it's not going to hit you, it can all of a sudden take a sharp right or left turn and run directly into you. And while that may not be very dangerous on the normal mode, it will be incredibly deadly on the mutated versions of this, and I would expect this fight to be very, very challenging. So here we can see her sort of flight mode where she will sweep around the map, diving past and trying to hit random players. I would be very careful being hit by that since it does a lot of damage and puts a nasty dot that will slow you. This is definitely not something that you want on and will be very complicated to deal with, so make sure you're avoiding that at all costs. There is another mechanic that will spawn periodically in the fight. There are pillars that will be positioned in probably one of 3 locations in the place where she spawned and 2 in the back. You will simply have a player run up and channel this pillar until it is destroyed with the Azov staff. She will try to drop meteors throughout the sky while this pillar is up, so that may complicate things, so make sure not to get hit by this pillar or these little meteors while you're channeling. So if you need to stop and then re-channel just to dodge a meteor, go ahead and do so, because dying is not gonna be great here. So next we'll go ahead and fast forward to some of the end mechanics so that you can see the loot and the final instances, as she does have a sort of enrage phase here. You can see roughly was this like 40%, 30%? She will call down like some sort of a flame pillar, and her moves will start to expedite. She will be doing things quicker and faster, and you will definitely have to be a little bit more aware and on top of dodging everything. Here we are in the last moments as the boss, and you can see things get a little bit chaotic with pillars up and raining fire and spinning flame things all over, but you will finally be able to take her down. She has a cool little exit visual as you kind of see her fate finally being sealed. We have been pursuing Isabella for quite some time, so it is nice to finally get that done. You will simply walk up to her and channel the Azov staff, which will sap and drain her of those powers that she has been siphoning and borrowing, and finally put an end to her reign of terror here, so that's definitely going to be nice to see. She does have several good items drops, so good luck. I hope that you find something really good. And there is a special thing in addition to this. There is a blue portal on the other side once you have defeated the boss that will have a sort of a cutscene deal in it. I'm not going to show you that cutscene because it contains a lot of spoilers and a lot of what's to come in the future. So if you want to check that one out, you will probably have to beat it yourself, but I will probably release it maybe like a week or two from now, this little cutscene. But it's going to tell you a lot about the story of Isabella, what's to come in the future with New World and the different races, and it's definitely something really cool to check out. So make sure you grab your expedition chest, and then if you leave the expedition through the blue portal, you will simply go and see that cutscene. If you want to, you can also go back. You will be at the beginning here towards the red portals. But all in all, I think this instance is fantastic, and I have thoroughly enjoyed it, so I highly recommend you come back in, check it, play it out, and at least get the story version of everything that's going on here. Alright, that's going to be it for this one, everyone. Thanks for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe, like, and hit the bell button if you haven't already. We have a Discord and other social medias in the description link down below, and we will catch you in the next video.